Yeah, then you start building on where orchestrations, an example, we had one customer years ago, they automated their journal entries, and it was taking, basically two people 40 hours a month to just get the journal entries in through the JD Edwards system to feed it into corporate. Went with orchestration on that. Then all they were dealing with was exceptions, and that error rate went down to maybe one a month as opposed to, hundreds of them at a time, over the course of a month. So not only did it save them time, but it increased the accuracy, the consistency, and so forth. And also the time to turn it around was faster.
Are your JD Edwards users bogged down with tedious manual tasks that drain productivity? What if your business could automate these processes seamlessly using advanced AI and cloud infrastructure? Today, I'm joined by Frank Jordan, an expert in JD Edwards technology, to reveal how you can integrate JD Edwards EnterpriseOne orchestrations with Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Services. You'll hear real-world success stories, learn how businesses are eliminating manual data entry, and discover actionable strategies for automating your critical business processes. Don't miss this episode. It is your key to transforming your automation strategy and boosting efficiency dramatically. Welcome to Not Your Grandpa's JD Edwards, the podcast dedicated to practical innovation in the JD Edwards ecosystem. I'm Nate Bushfield, and today I'm thrilled to welcome Frank Jordan, Director of JD Edwards Technology at ERP Suites. Today, he'll guide us through leveraging Oracle Cloud Infrastructure to supercharge your orchestrations and drive significant business outcomes. Frank, how are you doing today?
Doing fine, Nate. How are you?
Pretty good. It's been raining all week here in Cincinnati. I just want to see the sun. Is that too much to ask? I guess it is.
I'm in central Indiana, so I just wait for the weather to change. It's not a big deal. It's
Yeah, just wait 20
cold, hot.
minutes.
Yeah, or it's going to be 90 before it was in the 50s and 40s.
Very true. Your Pacers had a great game last night too, which was fantastic to watch. It's a lot of fun watching Tyrese Halliburton be out there. I really will say. But anyways, for our listeners out there that haven't seen one of your presentations yet, can you tell us a little background of yourself and how you got into the world of JD Edwards?
Sure. So I am actually one of those grandpas of JD Edwards. Started with basically used to work with mainframes, AS400, System 36, and also PC lands. Started with JD Edwards back in late 95 when it was the beta release of B714 that we don't talk about, but went live with B731. Kind of had fun with that because as a customer, it was CD number 4. So we were kind of like the fourth printed or distributed CD on that. But again, was a customer basically up until mid 1999, became a consultant business partner, and then started with JD Edwards in 2000. Progressed through that as a CNC, as basically CNC on JD Edwards and PeopleSoft and Oracle. Then in fourth quarter of 2012, worked with ERP Suites. I actually did an assessment on one of the customers and liked what I saw, and I've been with ERP Suites now for well, the last 13 years. So having a lot of fun.
That's awesome. I'm one of those people that I forgot that they were on CDs back in the day. I mean,
As they
it's
were,
not something we really see anymore.
came in a book, big book.
Wow. Times have really changed since back then, that's for sure. I couldn't even tell you the last time I held a CD in my hand. And I'm a movie guy, big movie buff, and I just haven't seen the CD in years, which is
I'm
very
showing my
funny.
age to say we used to have cards, Hollerith cards, and I mean they used to use them for voting, but I used to have 8-inch floppy disks that hold a whole whopping less than a megabyte.
Oh yeah, geez. The size of those things were giant and yet no space to actually put anything on there. But I
I,
guess it really has changed.
yeah,
I mean, my phone can hold up to what, 128 gigabytes now, which is smaller than a floppy disk. So that's doesn't make any sense, but happy that innovation has continued. But Frank, let's start with the challenges. Why do so many JD Edwards users continue to struggle with repetitive manual processes in an era of automation?
Well, I mean, like I said, over the years, what I've watched, we've progressed among various things. So, the traditional menu and point and click and all that, yeah, the ERP systems have made that much easier from the days of having to do it by hand or writing things down and passing paper along and all that. So JD Edwards, of course, has evolved its origins or world back on the S400 back in the late 80s, and then One World back then in 96, 97, morphed into EnterpriseOne. But the big thing about it is, there's still a lot of process. It took people, it took clicks, and so forth. Then Oracle, with the introduction of what they used to call IoT orchestrations, and that's been now 10 years, that was a way of having a robotic process. And JD Edwards has had a lot of forward thinking type of architecture, again, configurable network computing, CNC, basically allowed you to separate the technology from the applications. So the orchestration has taken that a step further in that it helps separate the user interface from the application logic and so forth. So by doing that, you can build, whatever channel you want. You can use the web. You can use a mobile device. You can talk to other systems. By doing that, now you automate a lot more. So that's where orchestrations have been so critical. It's another layer of the foundation to be able to expose JD Edwards, and as AJ Spano likes to say, it lets you access that gold of that business data that you have out there. So, again, the biggest thing with orchestrations has always been, where do I start? We have the same deal with AI. It's like there's so many options, and what we talk about is just start simple, do something. If you have a clipboard and you're writing things down, that's a potential to automate. And then, AI is going to take that even a step further with more intelligence, again, that you're layering on top.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of different people on this podcast talking about AI and similar conversation of just got to get it started. Something like it doesn't matter what it is. The first step is always the most important step. It might not be the most important for your business, but that first step will open up your company to a world of possibilities. And just taking the first step will get you over that little hump of maybe you're a little scared of what it could accomplish or something like that. But at the end of the day, it's going to help your business. It's going to increase productivity. And for one of the examples, mostly efficiency, I will say, but cutting down those clicks, getting the opportunities with automation, with AI, anything like that. It definitely is world changing views, and I'm sure it's come a long way since the disc of JD Edwards.
Sure.
It's just still insane to me.
You think about it, when you look at the automation, um, what it's giving you is to be focused more. You're trying to remove that mundane, that 80%, that 90% that you have to do. It's just like, even, we're getting to the point we'll have personas that can handle some of our email for us, and have our virtual selves. I mean, that's not that far out in the future. But you think about what you can do with that. Again, if I'm not having to deal with, oh, this job errored, and I got to go figure it out, and what happened, or why is this data not right? Then you start building on where orchestrations, an example, we had one customer years ago, they automated their journal entries, and it was taking, basically two people 40 hours a month to just get the journal entries in through the JD Edwards system to feed it into corporate. Went with orchestration on that. Then all they were dealing with was exceptions, and that error rate went down to maybe one a month, as opposed to, hundreds of them at a time, over the course of a month. So not only did it save them time, but it increased the accuracy, the consistency, and so forth. And also the time to turn it around was faster because they were literally taking these things in spreadsheets and sending them in. So, that was one example, said over 10 years ago, that just made a business more productive. And that's just one small example.
Yeah, exactly. Taking out the human error side of things, which I mean, we're all human. We all have mistakes and stuff like that, but nice automation, it can really cut through a lot of that stuff. I will say there are some crazy softwares out there too that are making like AI people that can have these conversations. So I might be out of a job here soon. Who's to say? They might have a virtual Nate that has podcasts and stuff like that. So hopefully we're far from that, but I'm
For
sure
jobs,
we'll get there.
yeah, it just presents new opportunity. With each one of these waves, I would say I'm actually busier now, just in the technologies and all that, because there's so much more behind the scenes.
Mhm.
It's different. It's a lot different now. We can automate a lot of the CNC pieces that we do as far as like applying software updates, building the packages, having the promotions, all that stuff. It can be integrated in through orchestration with your like ServiceNow as far as help desk software and ticketing and all those type of things. So yeah, I don't have to do that, but those were more manual tasks anyways. So by getting that automation in there, it's freed up for a lot of other higher end type opportunities.
Yeah.
That
So we
that's
talked about, sorry, we
it's
talked
okay.
about a lot of the different examples of manual tasks that could be automated, but what signs indicate it's time for a company to explore automation through OCI services?
Well, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, OCI, the cloud, they're like Amazon or Google and Microsoft Azure and so forth. So we work with all the clouds, but strategically for us as ERP suites, we've kind of set our sights to partner with Oracle um, to leverage the OCI services there. Also other AI services, of course. The big gorilla is the Chat GPT, OpenAI, and so forth. But working with Oracle, we're doing it where it's a little bit more focused on the business side and those type of things. So it just becomes another like a hybrid cloud solution. You don't have to. Yeah, I made this in one of the presentations, but people think you have to be on OCI Cloud in the sense that your JD Edwards system has to live there. It certainly doesn't. Um, we run the gauntlet. It basically you can be hosted on your own. You could be, what we call on premise. You could be in a private cloud, like in our ERP suites data centers. You could be over in AWS or OCI. Basically, it's just communication between those clouds. So the advantage of the OCI services is that Oracle is building and they continue to build just like the other providers, but they're adding new services, new solutions for you to be able to automate. And another example, just on if you are in Oracle Cloud, you can have orchestrations that can literally, you can set it up to add servers. It can provision new servers in the Oracle Cloud. We do some things where we provision trial editions, a miniature JD Edwards that you just, Oracle produces that image like twice a year, and we can load those up. And basically, we're calling OCI services in order to provision that, put it in like, in our case, it'd be in the East Coast and so forth. And so again, we're rapidly automating in that. Now, what they've added to these 150 plus services they have available, again, they have artificial intelligence APIs as well. So it's not just the operational side of Oracle Cloud infrastructure. They continuously are beefing up and adding new opportunities, new systems that are Legos, like building blocks. You just keep building and adding more on as you go along. So it's very powerful. And that story, we've been fortunate enough to be working with Oracle, even in some beta stages, getting access to certain software and getting in a little bit on the ground floor to be able to come up with some different solutions for the customers.
Yeah, and Honestly, it's been great for us to be able to work with Oracle. Even myself, I've gotten a little bit of a look inside of some new technology that they're trying to roll out or beta test, as you brought up. And they have so many great ideas. They have so many great, I don't know, I guess applications is the right word to say, in terms of some of these things that they're adding on to JD Edwards. And they really are for the customer. And the fact that we get in on the ground floor will only help it tailor it more towards the customer. And that's one of my favorite things about Oracle is they're not afraid to show people that are, yeah, we're close with them, we're partners with them. So it's not like they're breaking any trust or anything like that. So it is nice to see that they're actually open to have people on the outside come in, look at the product, see what they can change, see what we can do. But to go
Yep.
back a little bit and talk about the manual inefficiencies and how would those manual inefficiencies impact like user morale and overall business performance?
Sure. Well, again, a number of customers, have run JD Edwards for years, decades even. So, the Enterprise One 9.2 release has been really good with what they call the continuous delivery, where they're innovating on the same one. So the impact of upgrades and all that is much less than it used to be. The ability just to take like the yearly R24, release 24 or release 25 and so forth. It's made it easier for customers to introduce new feature functionality, both at a tools level and an app level. Um, so by doing that, though, they get the feedback, of course, customer enhancements, the Quest user groups, the special interest groups, and so forth like that, put in enhancements that they want. So by taking advantage of the new software features and so forth, you try to, again, either through orchestrations or maybe even just on how an application does something. It's kind of old if you're doing the same thing every day, 8 hours a day. Like and just keying this in, and I have to check it and walk through it, and you're doing hundreds or thousands of those. Where the automation can help with that is, again, it does that grunt work, so to speak, or that repetitive work. And then you're dealing with the exceptions, or you're focusing on the value add type situations on top of that. That's where these systems really can help the business. And JD Edwards keeps expanding, where orchestrations was more at a unit level, individual processes. Now they're moving into enterprise automation, and you're adding AI on top of that as well. So you're getting a bigger and bigger piece where these processes are interrelated. So it's a whole flow that you're nailing down. So, again, you're not just impacting one person's job, you're maybe impacting an entire business unit or, entire business divisions in an entire company.
Exactly. And one person's problem might be widespread across the company. Like there could be repeated orchestrations that could be used for just one person, one specific thing, or that orchestration could be widespread, could be put into a lot of different departments, different sides of the business, different industries. And that's what's really great about orchestrations. Like a lot of people have the same problem. So it's not hard to replicate something like that. And it's very simple. It can be very easy for a lot of these companies to say, all right, here's one issue here, but this other department's having the same issue. This other department, the list goes on. But it can be that simple of one thing is the actual issue, like the root issue. And you can fix it with one simple orchestration. But anyways, once a
Okay.
company identifies these issues, what's next? What's the next step?
Well, like I said before, it's that beginning, taking those baby steps. So, a lot of times, like our consulting teams and all that, you can have a reimagining or process transformations, things of that, where let's say you're on an older release of 9.2 as far as an update. Maybe you're still running the pre-release 22 and you're on tools 925 and you're 32-bit. So there's opportunities there where you could just do what we call a technical upgrade, but you could also blend it a little bit with some application wins out of that and get some small quick wins. Um, so, by identifying that, it's giving you that business case to update the software. Usually, again, there's also company, especially if you're a public company, you have to have security patches, you have to have the software at a supported level and so forth. So these are good times not to do just the technical upgrade, but say, well, we've done this process for the last 20 years this way. Maybe there's a different way now to make that more efficient. And once you do that, then the ideas start flowing. And again, it's that first step. It's just like you've got to learn to crawl before you can walk, before you can run. It's traditional on that. But once you have that, it's surprising the rate and the rapidness. Again, another customer example. One of the things they did to get past what we call digital transformation is they set a criteria that the ideas had to be prototype, proof of concept, and to be able to actually be implemented in 30 days or less. So you didn't have these giant projects that held everybody back, or it just couldn't be justified. You would do these quick wins that you could just do in days or weeks. So that's been another really powerful piece of JD Edwards with the introduction of the user-defined objects, or UDOs, UDOs,
Mhm.
different ways. But again, it's a software-based, database type construct that you're building it. So you're not having to have the developer code it, and we have to do package builds and all that. It's a very quick and dynamic way of getting those processes done.
Yeah. And it's funny that you bring up UDOs. I've always said UDO. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but I always have. But
That's fine.
anyways, it's neither here nor there. But the crawl, walk, run. That's something that we've talked about on this podcast before. Talking about quick wins, starting to learn how to crawl. But to begin connecting JD Edwards orchestrations with OCI services, what should companies do to practically begin this?
Sure. The biggest thing is that the older tools releases do have the ability to call other REST APIs. So they can go out to the internet and grab what it is. With OCI, though, the authentication piece, again, this comes down to OCI security in tools 9282, which was basically last year in Q4, when 9282 and then 9290, which is release 25, they put in an enhancement for what they call the OCI API key. So that essentially allows you to set up an OCI, a user with access to various services. So you're leveraging E1 security to be able to ask to certain orchestrations or applications, etc. But then on the OCI side, to call those services and to use various OCI services like the object storage and, or say, document understanding, there's security on that side as well. So this API key, that once it's set up, is a very secure, encrypted method. You can't just put in your name and password or anything like that. The APIs are being called from the orchestration, so that it's really locked down, and then you're opening it back up to the specifics of what you want to do. So the first thing someone has to do is get through the prerequisites of, if I want to use the OCI, I've got to be on, at least as far as the tools, I've got to be on the 9282 or later. We actually have some that are on the application side of 9.2. They're all the way back, maybe UN2 or UN3, which was 2018. They've still done the 64-bit migration, because you have to do that for release 22 and above. But once you meet those prerequisites, you prefer to get the apps updated as well, because then we got that synergy between tools and applications. But once you've got that in place, now again, you've opened up that door to all the rich OCI feature sets, the agents, the again, vision, document understanding, et cetera, that are available out there.
Yeah, obviously you have to have the right infrastructure to be able to begin a journey like this. And especially like orchestrations is a little bit different than like a actual like AI side of things, definitely. But got to make sure that your infrastructure is there, it's ready for that next step, or you could break things. And nobody likes anything broken at JD Edwards. I know that to be true. We're having you were talking earlier about how you were having issues with a certain customer being down. Obviously, it probably wasn't that specifically, but things can break. And so
Sure.
to have the right infrastructure, that's always the first step. But could you break down the essentials for our listeners who might not, or who might be new to OCI integration?
Sure. Yeah. So again, the prerequisites that I'm talking about, if you're going to an OCI service, and no different if you're going to another AI service as well, but you're going to be in that cloud. So you're going to have some way of accessing those services. There's some that you can test for free, but you get into volume, you get into production. It is a service. It's a paid service that you're initiating there. So you will have to have what's called an Oracle tenant in OCI. That tenant is then your container of your users that you're setting up for OCI integrations, and anything else that you're running it within Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Again, you have the JD Edwards prerequisites to be able to communicate with it, and that's what I referenced the release 24, the tools 9282, et cetera. But yeah, it's not, you just can't call the API. You have to have an actual account. It's very secure. So but once you've got those pieces in place, again, that's what the power of orchestration is. I can have solutions for mobile sites, mobile areas. The OCI just happens to be a nice way to consolidate that. Let's say if you had certain data, you could put very private business data. Maybe you want to store that in an autonomous database there. So that's just for your company only. There's nothing exposed out. There's nothing shared. Those type of situations. It's giving you that flexibility, to design your solution depending on what those business needs are going to be, and then expand and scale as you need to.
Yeah, exactly. But all right, without further ado, we're going to dive into some real world examples. Could you share some success stories about orchestrations integrating with OCI AI services?
Yeah. So, like I said, some of them that we do today are just regular, what I call just the regular OCI for provisioning and the infrastructure and so forth. The orchestrations can do that and automate quite a bit of it. They also have, like, if we were a CNCs and we were installing you into Oracle Cloud, we might basically just have a system where it can go in and through what they call Terraform scripts, it provisions all the servers. It's the actual name's called a one-click is, and like I said, the trial editions are a different subset of that where it's just an all-in-one on one instance. But you could do that. Then with the OCI services, so what we're doing now and doing more of, Oracle's JD Edwards direction is that the AI services cannot be part of, as far as coming from Oracle development, they cannot include these services in the software. So that's why they've done putting this foundation in for the orchestration to be able to connect to whatever the customer choices are. By allowing us to get to the OCI AI services, what we've done there is now it's opened up that whole world. So the prime example is like the document understanding, which we demoed at AI Week. What we had, Oracle gives you some really nice examples, but those are the demo examples. They're very, very specific use cases. What we did was take it a step further, where in this particular case, and I know we'll talk about it, but we could use those services and we tailored and trained a model to be able to do that. So, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit, but that's really right now. We've had some that we've had at the some of the Quest events. We've had
Mhm.
customers speaking there on certain services that we started working with. The other areas, and I'm not on the application side, so I'm the guy that makes the plumbing and the electrical all work. But the bottom line is you can take advantage of various services like the machine learning to identify trends and so forth. So we've had it looking at forecasts and look at the data and then provide something where instead of having a user sitting down doing all that analysis, you've got the machine learning identifying it, and then they're getting to handle any exceptions or something that might look a little out of bounds, again, making them more productive.
Yeah. Way to downplay what you do for sure, but you know what? I'll allow the electrical and the plumbing there.
We all like our lights and we all like to flush and get water. So, but
Yeah, I can't imagine what life would be like without that, honestly. But to go back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, you mentioned document understanding and OCI vision. How exactly are these services streamlining, daily operations with JD users?
sure. Well, like starting the OCI vision, of course, Oracle has a lot of recognition already for different types of objects. So you could give it a photo, you can give a JPEG, whatever, and it can be used to identify with confidence levels what it's seeing. Well, again, with the vision and say machine learning together, you could be looking at quality control. That's kind of one of the a primary use case where the parts are coming along and it's scanning and looking at it and says, whoops, look, this component here is missing something. So then it could flag that, and basically JD Edwards would know when it was putting together maybe the work order or so forth, to be able to go in and say, well, we need to either look at this or reject this and so forth. So you get a lot of good pieces of that. Document understanding, on the other hand, that's where we kind of focus the initial efforts. So, again, that in that particular case, it's reading text, Word documents, PDFs, you're feeding it different types of documents there. And again, depending on what it is, you may have to have custom models that you train more specifically for that. Oracle AI makes that really nice to do that. It's not as difficult as it may have been like 3-4 years ago. We don't have to have data scientists to do that part. But in our case, what I'll talk about, what I demoed at AI Week was we just had custom forms. So the forms would be able to do either suppliers or vendors or adding an employee. And it would take all that information, depending on which one it was, it would come back to the orchestration with the fields that got plucked out of that document. And, again, a person didn't have to type all that in. This could be something coming from a vendor to, they send in the form, they fill it out. Instead of someone having to key it all in, um, basically the document understanding gets the fields, and then it can notify, hey, I've added this for you if you just want to take a look at it. So that's been one of the neat use cases of removing some of that again manual data entry.
Yeah, exactly. And it cuts out the need for somebody to go through a work order or go through one of those documents and really nitpick and see every single little thing that could take somebody. Yes, it might only take an hour or two or something like that to really go through a document like that, but it does it in what, 5 minutes or less ish. I might be underselling it at this point.
When we did the demo, I mean, obviously that was a simple form of about 20 fields or so, but
Mhm.
it did that in well under 30 seconds. So
See, I was underselling it. I was underselling it, man.
yeah, but again, more complex situations and all that, you could have more. But yeah, you basically, it was different ones, and so by reading through it, it could do the traditional address book add and put in the various fields that it needed to. So, and yeah, it's neat to see it. You can also, automate. It depends on, again, it's the use case. How often do you do that stuff? How much time would it save somebody? What are the error rates that have occurred in that process? Have we got it wrong where maybe someone was classified as a vendor, but they were a supplier, that type. So again, that's where the AI can help with again, analyzing or looking at some of those trends.
Exactly. And thank you for sharing that. Honestly, it's always great to look beyond, obviously, everyone. Well, some of the people that are listening to this know what document understanding is, they know what OCI vision is, but it's hard to come up with your own use cases if you've never really utilized it. So it is great to hear an actual use case from somebody who has been around that a lot, I will say. And correct me if I'm wrong. I assume you've seen this a lot so far, ever since it really has been rolled out, right?
Yeah, I mean, orchestrations again we started that out when it was IoT, and
Hmm.
we kind of basically the paradigm changed that, hey, this is a great automation and integration tool. And like I said, it just, it's been building and building. And again, that's just another level where AI now can cooperate with that. And like you said, we're just assembling various services together to accomplish, certain goals and tasks. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, it's been a long journey. Learn again, every day I learn something new. So that's also what keeps it. May be it's not your grandpa's JDE, like we say. It definitely is a little different. I have a lot of war stories. So it's a lot different than what it was back in the 90s, that's for sure.
Well, we'll have to have you back on and talk about some of these war stories and what ended up happening in terms of how you fixed them or something like that. I mean, just hearing about the use cases is something that it's invaluable. It's something that every customer would loves to hear because they might have seen that, they might have heard about it, they might have been going through it themselves. So it's always great to talk about use cases just in case it can help out somebody that is having that issue. But if today's episode has resonated and you're ready to eliminate manual tasks and significantly boost efficiency, now is the time to act. Visit erpsuites.com or connect directly with Frank Jordan and his team. Whether you're looking for quick automation wins or aiming for comprehensive digital transformation, ERP Suites has expertise and experience to help you achieve real, measurable business outcomes. But that's a wrap on today's insightful episode of Not Your Grandpa's JD Edwards. Huge thanks to Frank Jordan. I know you've been insanely busy, so it's great to have you on here to share your valuable insights. And if you've enjoyed today's discussion, subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with anyone who's ready to move beyond outdated manual processes. Until next time, keep automating, keep innovating, and keep pushing JD Edwards forward. Catch you later.